That's not to say it's the only technology that federates, but oh, it's a little obvious how everything else that does need to federate pulls DNS in when they need to do it. Consider email. Email needs a way to determine which server it sends its data to. Does it deliver an email to one location or another? How does it do that? It goes to DNS. It does a lookup for the MX record to find out which server in this particular gets this chunk of the email namespace. The web has the same origin policy, quite possibly the largest advance in security technology of the last 15 years. It, too, goes ahead and turns DNS names into identities, which have ACLs associated with them. Even SSL, even X509, the ostensible, by design, federated ecosystem. You know, let's take a look at this for a second. First of all, it's not very reliably federated. Which root CAs do you trust? You know, how many people have ever used wget and it's like, I don't know, this particular wget supports this root CA, but not that root CA. It's not particularly coherent. It's also not very federated. Wildcard certificates are difficult to acquire and actually unreliable amongst clients. So there's constant cross-company interaction required for each new server you spin up. You got to go ahead, talk to someone outside the company and be like, yeah, I need another cert. Yeah, I need another cert. And shockingly enough, only the machines that really absolutely massively need certificates are the ones that get them. And it's not actually independent of DNS either. When you look at common names, one of the things you find is, hey, what is in the common name? What is the declaration of identity that an SSL cert is declaring? 9 times out of 10, that's a DNS name. That's how they went ahead and built out their system. The funny thing is, it's not that it's impossible to do federation without DNS. It's just without DNS, it's either, you know, maybe a small, maybe a large company, and it's probably 1,000 times more expensive at least. And so that's why it stays so small. Now, I'm not kidding when I say everyone federates with DNS, because all the technologies I just named are themselves built on. Password resets use email, so the passwords only go to the user that owns the account. OpenID uses the web and its same origin policy, so different sites can use the same authentication server safely. SSL uses email, so that only the user that controls a domain can acquire a signed certificate for it. Everywhere you look, when you get down to it, the federation comes from DNS. But there's a problem. And it's pretty simple once you look at it. DNS tells you how to get there. It tells you what the address is that you need to use through all the various quirks and delegations that are possible. But you know what? It tells you how to get there, but it doesn't tell you what to expect when you arrive. It doesn't tell you who you're going to see. It is the worldwide distributed, fully federated database. It reasonably secures everything going into it, but it offers no assurance on whatever you get back out. Now, in theory, what this would mean is that because DNS doesn't secure its content, nobody would possibly treat its payloads as security critical. That would be nice, but it's not real. Reality is, it is the only thing that can scalably tell you where to go. So people are just not caring that it doesn't tell you who to expect. Take a look. Email imports DNS. Email knows where to go, but not who to deliver mail to. The web imports DNS. The web knows where to go, but not if an ISP has changed anything. Password resets import email, which imports DNS, which knows where to go, but not who it's necessarily giving that admin token to. DNS's inability to authenticate replies surfaces as a failure to authenticate in system after system after system. Now, we can deny that these systems exist. We can insult their authors and call them bad programmers. We can pat ourselves on the back for being so perceptive, or we can start dealing with our inability to authenticate. Now, it turns out, interestingly enough, that our problems with authentication are fairly extensive. In fact, they are arguably the defining factor of many of the major flaws of this year. Mike Zussman, who I just actually met a couple months ago, interesting guy, started playing around with SSL VPNs. Now, this software has no other purpose but to prevent bad guys from reading your traffic. That's what they do. That's why they're bought. That's why people spend money on them. But guess what? They don't actually check if a bad guy's intercepting the traffic and make sure that not to send traffic to them. They'll give the traffic to anyone. Mike Perry built a little tool called Cookie Monster. So the interesting thing about Cookie Monster is HTTP is tunneled over SSL, and you receive cookies over it. And those cookies are authentication tokens, like that thing that just got mailed through Drupal. And it authenticates access to https www.bank.com. By default, those authentication cookies will also go to http www.bank.com. Now you can change that. You can change the default with a non-standard tag called secure in your cookie. But as Mike Perry found out, almost nobody does that. And then there's Francisco Amato, EvilGrade, the automatic update manipulator. One would think that anybody who went out on the internet and said, "Dear Internet, please give me arbitrary code to execute," that they would actually authenticate the code received. No. It wasn't even like small guys. It was like Java, iTunes, OpenOffice. Yikes. Two more. Luciano Bello's Debian random number generator, one of the cooler bugs from the year. Yikes. You know, it's not a private key if there's only 1 out of 65,000 of them. Amazing how 1 out of 65,000 just got plucked out of the air once again. This is the actual coolest bug of the year. I think it's cooler than my bug. How many of you guys know about the SNMPv3 bug? God, I love this. So, you know, you gotta have, I'm gonna bastardize the bug. Imagine if you had a website that was asking your password and you didn't know it. But you could say, you know, I can't give you my full password, but I bet I can give you the first letter of it. Is that okay? Yeah, it was that kind of bug. God, that was glorious. So, you know, our common trait here is that flawed authentication is the unifying theme of 2008's major bugs. From SSL to Cookie Monster, from SNMPv3 to EvilGrade, we just don't know who we're talking to, and it's getting us in a heck of a lot of trouble. We just don't know. So there's some common traits of all the bugs that I just told you. The first major common trait is they're all so amazingly simple. DNS's TTL defense can be bypassed with alternate names. Authentication cookies received securely will be sent insecurely. SSL VPNs don't care who they deliver packets to. Large amounts of software don't care who they get their updates from. These are not complicated bugs to understand. A collection of a few words and you can build a repro. Okay, we don't have that in a lot of other things. The flip side is these bugs are horrendously complicated. Now I was talking to a friend of mine. He's a release manager at a company that has to deal with a whole bunch of bugs that y'all find. You know what he told me? He looked me straight in the eye and he said, "Dan, I love buffer overflows. They're so simple to fix. No one depends on them. No one builds entire companies that need that buffer to take more memory than it actually has. You don't need to collaborate with any other companies that suffer from them, build mitigation plans, multi-phase systems. You find a bug, you put a stupid little wrapper around it to say, make sure this number isn't too big, and you move on. And that's not design bugs. None of those bugs I just told you is particularly trivial to fix. Most of them are still there. The fourth common trait is that the bugs I just told you blend, and they blend really well. This is, by the way, why it's ridiculous to compare who found the bigger or better bug. There's no such thing as a bug so good, another bug can't actually make it better. So, DNS and SNMPv3 give you a pretty good basic for the rest of the things to be directly exploited. DNS and SNMPv3 let you become man in the middle. So, when Cookie Monster is man in the middle, it can go ahead and impersonate HTTP www.bank.com, thus getting the authentication cookie. When you have Debian with its generated certificates, you can use DNS or SNMPv3 to impersonate SSL endpoints. And of course, as was in the actual EvilGrade demonstration video, you can use DNS to provide false packages for Java. Interestingly, DNS also lets you exploit SNMPv3, and I thought this path was kind of cool, so I'll kind of mention it. Well, so DNS, so last year we were talking about how Java has access to sockets, make network connections, right? So DNS is, we had to lock that down because you could kind of, I don't know, get behind firewalls and own a bunch of machines. So they went and said, okay, we're only going to allow you to connect to addresses when DNS says it's okay. Well, we own DNS, so DNS is saying you on that browser can make a network connection anywhere you want, TCP or UDP, to which I say, UDP? May I please have UDP access to every Cisco network device behind your firewall? And Java says, sure, no problem. And then the SNMP-v3 bug comes. So again, I mean, really, it's ridiculous to compare bugs. They work well together when they're design bugs. Fifth common trait is that they are often found in old systems. The DNS bug was in a spec from 1983. The cookie spec was from the mid-90s. SSL requirements have been known from the dawn of the protocol. And the v3 spec has been around for years too. Age does not predict quality. In fact, frankly, we didn't used to take care of security that well. I don't even know if we do now, but we really used to do it pretty badly in the past. The sixth common trait is that all these bugs, all these authentication flaws, are very, very slow and expensive to repair. DNS Fix is probably the largest simultaneous patching operation of all time. It was an amazing amount of work just to minimize the disruption from the fix. I think we did a pretty decent job, but this was something that was 2 days to find the bug and 8 months to fix. And this was a simple fix. No one depended on ports not being randomized. The patch rate was a lot higher than our wildest dreams. Paul Vixie, in his experience with DNS patches, and he's been through a few of these, say the least, he was expecting 50% coverage after maybe a year. We hit 75% after about a month. So that was cool. I wish we had that for all the bugs I just described. You know, major sites are still struggling to adapt to the cookie monster attacks. SSL VPNs are still widely broken despite public knowledge of their flaws. So it's not like these bugs fix themselves. I have an interesting theory. And I'm going to tell you straight out, I don't know if it's right, and there's no real way to know. But here's a historical what if for all of you. What if DNS had been secure from the start? Would all of these design bugs have actually happened? SNMP-v3 and the Debian bug definitely would have. But what of the SSL VPN issue? What of Cookie Monster? What of EvilGrade? Why are SSL VPNs insecure? Now I'm going to be honest with all of you. My original reaction to finding out that SSL VPNs, which had no other purpose but to prevent bad guys from reading the traffic, that they weren't actually checking for bad guys, okay, I was pretty pissed. I was mortified. I'm like, who are you people? Why would you possibly sell a product that doesn't even do the one thing you're designed to do? I kind of blamed commercial realities for it. Then I started listening. Well, we have to ship test gear to our customers. And you know, it still has to work after they buy it. How are customers supposed to actually get SSL certificates onto their devices? You know, it's an interesting question. The present system for securing SSL for devices requires interactions between 3 companies: a device manufacturer, a customer, and a third-party root certificate authority. Okay, guys, intercompany interactions are expensive, especially when you need to do it on every single purchase, especially when things will actually still work if you don't do it. And yet, every single one of these devices, for the most part, maybe 90–95%, they may not have an SSL certificate, but I bet you they're showing up in the company's DNS tree. I bet you that someone actually was able to do enough administration on that device to get that thing in DNS because no one wanted to be dependent on raw IP addresses. Anyone ever deploy a bunch of machines on raw IP addresses and then need to readdress? This sucks. You don't know what's depending on the old addresses. You can't update them. It's a nightmare. So here's a question. If DNS had been a secure place in the first place to put certificate hashes, might SSL VPNs have just told people, hey, you know, when you're putting the IP address in DNS, just put this hash too and you'll be done. Maybe this problem never would have happened. What about HTTP cookies via SSL? Why would it be that the same authentication strategy cookies get shared between the secure and insecure side of a site? Well, it's because there is a secure and insecure side of a site.